Hello, everyone. This is Professor Hamamoto. It is September 22nd, year 2022. Yes, 22, 22. Is it a sign? I don't know. We're going to be talking about signs and wonders today. Not excessively, because the focus is going to be on an incredible, fairly new book. It came out in 2021. It's new to me. By the way, it's 3 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And the title of today's talk, as you see, is Archbishop Vigano on the Deep State. We know what that is, more or less, so I don't have to belabor that. Slash Deep Church. Now, that is not a phrase or a concept that I coined, but it makes perfect sense when Cardinal Vigano himself comes up with this term, Deep Church. And wow, I was astounded, and as you can see by the description of this talk today, um, I'm sharing my astonishment and joy, maybe even ecstasy, bordering on ecstasy, intellectual ecstasy, perhaps religious ecstasy. Right as I was putting this talk together, I started thinking back on my trips to Distrito Federal in Estados Unidos de Mexico. I used to go there frequently, and I made a pilgrimage to the site where there was the Virgin of Guadalupe, which is the patron saint of Mexico. If you see Mexican American people or Mexican immigrants, mostly men, because the medallions are larger, like at their throat there, that's the Virgin of Guadalupe, most likely. But I went there once, and maybe, hopefully, I'll be able to have enough time to share with you some of my observations there, because I didn't intend to get into this when I was preparing for this talk, reading this fine book here. And the title, of course, is A Voice in the Wilderness, right? You know the subtitle. He specifically references America, the United States of America, because the cardinal, and I won't go into his background except that he knows America. He's lived here for well, this is a number of years ago. He lived here for 5 years as a papal nuncio. That is, he's the diplomatic emissary of the Holy See of the Vatican. He has both the ecclesiastical and secular power in sort of like a viceroy in Washington, D.C. So he had a very close look at where America was going. This is not some sort of remote analysis. It's not your what I call the pop-up pundits that are in America. They live here, but they don't go anywhere. They're sitting in front of their microphone in their studio like me. I need to get out, and I'm really anxious to do so shortly. But anyway, you could read about his background. Just this is one case where I'll recommend Wikipedia. Impeccable bona fides and curriculum vitae, a man of a of incredible training, background, education, and experience, both ecclesiastical and in the secular world. And as most of you know who are here in the live chat, he's a very big supporter of not Trump, the individual, but what Trump really represents for America and for the world, and as a figure who has steadfastly come out against the New World Order. And the cardinal uses that expression without any shame, without any sort of reservation, without any apology. How refreshing. Because most of us here who are in the chat and are going to watch are used to it's mostly snickering, right? My professional oh, yeah. Look at that Hamamoto guy. First he did the porno stuff, and then he's on the Alex Jones show. He's talking about the New World Order. And boom, 2020, man, the hammer comes down. So who's the fool? Fool, you people in so-called technocultural studies at UC Davis, who I know I was doomed, but I gave my little talk there. And as soon as I've told the story before, as soon as I left, the room exploded in laughter. So you're the ass clowns, as it turns out. And I knew that because I can see into the future because I'm attuned. Maybe metaphysically, I don't know. I'm not going to claim any sort of powers, but definitely from the standpoint of cultural forensics, where you people are, the ones in the academic world, the world of law, you're locked into your little stovepipe, right? You're just looking at a really narrow section of reality. Open yourself up. We need your help. We need everybody to just open their minds, open themselves to experience. Maybe you should consider prayer. I mean, this is a constant theme in here, not really pounding it away like some of these fire and brimstone. By the way, the whole Tammy Faye Baker and all these televan, that stuff was all set up there to discredit uh, Protestant Christianity, just like the whole homosexual infiltration of the church, or what Archbishop Vigano calls the deep church. That was all part of the discreditation and the sort of like, oh, it's so slimy. I don't. So let's all go with the social justice people who seem to be against all this filth and corruption. But indeed, you see that this was the expression goes, or the phrase, it was the full spectrum operation, right? And Cardinal Vigano is not, well, he's the first high level um, person in the Vatican, very close to people within the Holy See itself, to lay it out. So, and that's why I'm so astounded and sharing my astonishment with you that someone of such high stature. Because to tell you the truth, okay, I'll be honest, I was expecting something of a more moralistic bent. Like, yeah, say your prayers, do the rosary, um, be a good Catholic, be a good Christian, follow the Ten Commandments. And I'm not criticizing that or mocking it in any way. But the point is, my expectations were not very high. Just like last Tuesday, my expectations were very high for the documentary Alex's War, and I was sorely disappointed. Well, this is the nature of my work here. I'm just going from low to high. Today, just 2 days later, I'm just so happy to be sharing with you. I'm not going to be going through the segments or but it's a huge book. It's over 400 pages long, and thank you very much for the Patreon people to allow me to buy such incredible books. I encourage you to read it. You're going to find it not dogmatic, not theological. There's a place for theology. I'm not a theological uh, expert by any means. I read some of it. I try to read, the Aquinas and everybody that's been influenced by that. I've read some of the church writings, the theological writings, and it's not preachy at all. It's a compilation. It's an edited compilation. I mean, all the text is there, but they're selected and introduced by, I think, there's an incredible editor. I'm going to say his name because he deserves, uh, I think, a huge amount of credit for making this book what it is. His name's Brian M. McCall. And I don't know what his bio is, but he's obviously a learned individual. And his introduction of the book and the introductions for the 3 separate and distinct sections are excellent. If you only read Brian McCall's introduction, that'll make you happy and give you hope for the victory that seems imminent as more and more people in the clergy, within the profession of the law, tons of people in the medical profession, and even academia, right? They're always kind of the last. They're really good at trying to engineer scenarios, but they're not very good at trying to clean up after their mess. The church is trying to, if he's, the archbishop and others are, if they're emblematic or representative of a movement within the Catholic Church itself. There are a lot of people within it who are beginning to say we need to fundamentally change course and remove the. I think Archbishop Vigano even refers to them as a mafia. I know it's a translation, but he's referring to a group of people who are controlling, and the majority of them are, frankly speaking, they're homosexual. right? And there's one book that I read several years ago. I'm not going to share it today, but it's celebrating it. Let me see if I can give you a citation. I was horrified by it. He's kind of snickering and gloating the fact that in his own claims, let's see here, his own claim was that 80% of the people in the Vatican were homosexual. Here it is. Here's the title. It's a translation from a French writer who's very much influenced by Derrida and Foucault, of course, who was a giant pervert who was embraced by the theory people in the so trendy English literature and comparative literature and the humanities people, right? The ones that have endowed chairs in comparative literature at Yale or at Berkeley, the ones I talked about who were into whole GLBT. Well, anyway, Frederic Martel comes out of that bag in France, and there's a whole history, the whole occult substrate that was behind the French Revolution that is still in force here in the current revolution. This is not what Archbishop Vigano is saying. This is my own reading. I'm just kind of amplifying it. Anyway, the title of the book it says it all. It says, "In the Closet of the Vatican, subtitle, Power, Homosexuality, Hypocrisy." And this was published by Bloomsbury Continuum, one of those globalist press at Bloomsbury. It's an homage to the Bloomsbury Group, who were one of the early liberal, left liberal Tavistock type people, right? Your Fabians, so-called. These are the Virginia Woolf and that group there. Oh, indeed. They're in Bedford Square, London. Okay, this was published in 2019, fairly recent. I thought this book is an abomination. So anyway, I'm just telling you this. I'm so relieved that books such as not just the one I'm dealing with today, but also this is an excellent book. It's by a investigative journalist by the name of Michael D'Antonio. I think he's American by nationality. He's a Pulitzer Prize winner for. If that impresses you, it impresses me to a certain degree. He's certainly not one of these pop-up pundits that are polluting the tube land here. But the title is Mortal Sins, subtitle, Sex, Crime in the Era of Catholic Scandal. And I'm not going to go, most of you know at least enough. You've seen the news that I don't have to rehearse and review all the different cases, but he does it methodically. And he's also interviewed first person a lot of the victims, as well as some of the perpetrators who were involved on this. I've taken extensive notes on this book. I bought it when it came out. I'm not a newbie on this. I've been following the Catholic Church scandals for years because, like most of you, I read John Philip Phelps, is it? John Eric Phelps, Vatican Assassins, on all those books there. And I read about Pedro Arrupe and the Black Pope and all the stuff that was once called conspiracy, right? Yeah, this came out in 2014. Okay, so we're making some progress here. All right. And I'll just play you very briefly for those of you who do not know the significance of Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano. I'll just play a little bit of his letter to President Donald Trump, who, as you might remember, acknowledged he was so touched by getting this letter by a former papal nuncio stationed in D.C., not during the Trump administration. He was gone by that time. That he tweeted about it. So here's a little bit of the letter to not just to Donald Trump, but he's talking to us, the American people, and the people of the world. He says, "Here is one Roman Catholic who is on the side of righteousness," and he's addressing the believers, not the people who have infiltrated the papacy.
President, in recent months, we have been witnessing the formation of two opposing sides that I would call biblical, the children of light and the children of darkness. The children of light constitute the most conspicuous part of humanity, while the children of darkness represent an absolute minority. And yet, the former are the object of a sort of discrimination, which places them in a situation of moral inferiority with respect to their adversaries, who are often who often hold strategic positions in government, in politics, in the economy, and in the media. In an apparently inexplicable way, says Archbishop Vigano in his letter, the good are held hostage by the wicked and by those who help them either out of self-interest or fearfulness. He continues, these two sides, which have a biblical nature, follow the clear separation between the offspring of the woman and the offspring of the serpent. Of course, there he's referring to Genesis 3:15, the proto-gospel.
There you have it, the children of darkness. The literary content, the high-level literary content of this book alone is mind-boggling. And the truth of it is even more profound. I encourage you, because the text of that letter to President Trump is included here. And we're going to end this. I'm going to make sure that I save enough time. It's going to be about 2.5 minutes at the end of this cast here, where Archbishop Vigano gives a prayer to the United States of America, to the American people. And I want to watch that with you in its entirety. Okay, so I'm kind of watching the clock so I don't run over as I have been lately. So it's all here. Then again, the introductions is incredible, and the productivity, the prolific engagement with everybody, including he even wrote to a cloistered nun whose identity he did not reveal, who was kind of embarrassed about being part of the Roman Catholic Church because of all the scandal. This is one of the reasons why they were corrupted, because anybody who is affiliated formally or even has an affection, a fondness. I'm not Roman Catholic myself, although I did go to catechism. I was never confirmed. I think I kind of stepped back and said, I need to look a little bit more close. I'm not going to just do it as an issue of faith. But I'm just telling you this because I have always felt a lifelong attraction and respect for Catholic theology and the Roman Catholic. I won't say church, but it's good works, and any number of nuns and priests, local parish priests, where I grew up, and my schoolmates who went to parochial school, Servite, and see, there were always the really good athletic schools because they could draw from it, from everywhere. But so they always clean up in the CIF, football and basketball. But my friends were, I was just amazed that their level of learning and intellectual attainment was so much better than what I was getting in public school. So anyway, I'm just telling you that and when I was in elementary school, I was also weekly. They had what was called, this is in Orange County, the Anaheim School District. I don't know what the formal name is, but they used to say that God and religion, education, that's the foundation. So they would have what's called, and of course there were all these court challenges at the Supreme Court level and locally, state level. So they had a workaround in my school district called religious release. So once a week, the Protestants can go to their deluxe trailer parked right outside the campus of John Marshall Elementary School in Anaheim. I was kind of jealous. They had a really nice trailer. And then the people who were interested in Catholicism, I was not baptized or confirmed, would go to a lady's house. She's really beautiful. I was in love with her. And we would learn, catechism. And then the Jews, they were in the minority. They also had their religious relief. I don't think there were any people for Buddhism or Islam, but the three major ones, in terms of population serving, would get that kind of instruction as part of our school day, but not on school grounds per se. So maybe that's something that we might revisit. That's why I'm mentioning it. Revisit it as a model here in 2022. They called it religious release. Somebody in it should do a study on it. I'm going to try to see if anybody's written any papers on it. But of course, most people in schools of education have been indoctrinated in atheism and Marxism, and they've been indoctrinated to see all religions as being the enemy of humanity. Right? That's schools of education in the United States of America. They're the major source, institutional source of the problems we're seeing today, and very few people talk. It's no mistake that Bill Ayers Jr. taught in the School of Ed at the University of Illinois, courtesy of his dad, Bill Ayers. As I said before, I'm going to keep hammering on this. Senior put a building on there, residential building, so his junior can get a teaching job. And as I told you before, I was surrounded by people whose dads were in high level corporate intelligence, even the Japanese American, what's the Japanese American cultural centers and all the endowed chairs and the heads of their dads were all Niseis who were spies, for the U.S. government, for the Navy, and also against Japanese Americans. And they were the ones who put Japanese Americans in the concentration camps. They did all people like Norman Mineta's father, who was an insurance man. Remember Norman Mineta? Yes, the plane's coming closer. He was at the presidential evacuation with Dick Cheney. Oh, let it come. That's that Norman Mineta, right? He's one of that's in my book, Servitors of Empire. All right. Why do you think I'm ostracized within this community of spooks of Japanese? And the Latinos have them, the Negroes have them, Jews have them. I'm sure there's the Islamic people who they got a bunch of spies and snitches within their groups. Just assume that that's the way it is, and um, don't go to them for help. My gosh, you're going to the serpent for help, and the serpent will strangulate you, strangle you. Okay, let me move on. I'm sorry for the digress. I just felt that I needed to talk a little bit about my own involvement in discussion here. It's certainly not dispassionate. Now there's some, because I said I was going to deal a little bit with prophecy. Oh, again, so for those of you who didn't know, um, Archbishop Vigano, you got to see some of his words. You see his picture here. And just to give you a little taste, I don't want to really dwell on these miscreants like Thomas McCarrick, who was also in D.C. I think he was a big time. He was a cardinal. He was appointed by the Pope, right? By the way, you ever get a chance to see the movie The Two Popes, 2019, starring the great British actor Jonathan Pryce, right, and the great Welsh actor Anthony Hopkins, right? Remember? Silence of the Lambs. He brings that intensity into this movie. It's kind of a strange movie. You've got a pope who's still the pope. He resigned, and they have the new guy, Francis Bergoglio, right? Who Bergoglio, by the way, I learned in this book that in Italy itself, journalists and writers can refer to popes by their last name, and it's no disrespect. You don't have to say Pope Bergoglio or the Holy Father. You can say Bergoglio. You can say Francis. You can say Ratzinger. So I learned something. I'm not being disrespectful, and they made sure that people who are reading it meant that there was no disrespect to the office or to the person by extension. But Bergoglio is singled out for a lot of criticism in this particular book, justifiably so, in my humble opinion. Okay, but let me just show you a little bit about Thomas McCarrick. And he's the highest level American cleric to be laicized. Laity is like you and me. We are not ordained and we don't have any special status within the church. And I've gone to Catholic churches. I go there, I visit. I even worship, I will say, especially when I'm in Mexico. I just like going to these churches that you can see outside, erected like in 1570. It's like a stone building that's still around in the 21st century. And wow, this is amazing. I got to check. And I went to a Christmas mass too at the main cathedral in the Zocalo in the DF. So anyway, full disclosure, I'm not, but I hope I get a chance to talk about my religious experience. Seeing the site where the Virgin of Guadalupe, there was an apparition, right? And the reason why I'm kind of revisiting this, because if you've been watching my playlist for the past several months, I have been talking about um, the possibility of Marian, that is the Virgin Mary apparitions, uh, manifesting themselves. Who knows when? And in preparing for this talk, I found this one channel. I guess that's an unofficial Vatican channel that talks about the Ukraine war, Ukraine versus Russia. Which means NATO versus Russia, is being really tied into the third prophecy of Fatima, which is 1917. I don't have time to go into that, but there have been movies made of, books extensively. Check it out. But there were three children, Portuguese, and there was one remain. I think two of them went into became nuns. I don't know what happened to one was a boy, but the last remaining nun, they didn't reveal the third secret of the Marian apparition in Fatima, and it had to do with what was then called the Soviet Union. Until the Soviet Union abandoned its communism, uh, there was not going to be any sort of reconciliation. And as you know, Putin says that years ago, he said that all these years he was secretly, and his family were always part of the Eastern Orthodox Church. Okay, so maybe that's part of what's going on here, right? But you got the atheist NATO agglomeration and all the atheists who are the neocons and the neoliberals in America and Britain and Germany, who are trying to crush the last vestiges of Christianity. I don't know. That I'm just speculating. But anyway, here's the pervert, Thomas McCarrett. In case you need to be updated, I'm not going to belabor the point
McCarrick
here.
is a predator.
Robert Hotzen, a former priest in the Archdiocese of Newark, was ordained by now resigned Cardinal Theodore McCarrick. He spent Sunday morning demonstrating against the 88-year-old McCarrick in front of the Cathedral of the Sacred Heart in Newark. Hotzen founded the Road to Recovery, assisting victims of clergy sex abuse and their families. And he says a Vatican trial into allegations that McCarrick sexually abused altar boys and young seminarians for decades is not enough.
We want criminal investigations of all of the allegations against Theodore McCarrick because it is our belief that there was knowledge of the actions of Theodore McCarrick for decades.
McCarrick's history of possible sexual abuse began as early as 1969 when, as a young priest, he's accused of molesting a young man identified only as James. There was also an allegation he abused an altar boy 47 years ago in the Archdiocese of New York that was found to be credible. McCarrick said he was innocent. Several former seminarians have also come forward to claim sexual harassment. Now resigned Cardinal Theodore.
You know what? That little still that I left it on, that reminds me of this guy who was he was listed as the co-chancellor of the University of California, Davis. I went to talk to the defamed and humiliated Linda Katehi, who ordered the gassing of my students on the quad in peaceful assembly and peaceful protest. And I went to go talk to her about a number of issues. I needed to face the serpent woman herself. And guess who was sitting in the corner there? A guy looked just like that guy. They have a certain look, the Jesuits, right? I won't give you his name. He was there. I think he's still over there. And I'm just telling you there is because the penetration of this institution is not just within the Vatican, right? This is what Archbishop Vigano is familiar with firsthand, but I'm telling you, it exists in a much wider context. And I should state before going on that it's a global problem in places that you might not even suspect. Okay, even in Japón, right, Japan, where my people come from, right, the Jesuits were already infiltrated far even before they went to Baja California or Alta California to set up the missions. They were already setting up the missions in China, and Japón, and all through Southeast Asia. And everywhere they went, all those societies became colonized and they became third world. They became the sick men of Asia, and they opened the door to occupation by the Dutch East Indies Company, British imperialism, right? Except for Japan, because they had a whole era. It's called Sengoku Jidai, the Warring States period, where all the different daimyo were fighting for supremacy to unite the world. And one of them's names was Oda Nobunaga. Let me just briefly, because I think it's very important, because Mexican history is tied into Japanese history. As I told you before, you may not have picked it up, but in the Battle of Veracruz, right, you had Commodore Admiral Perry in a naval battle, right, which led to the unequal Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which made a lot of northern Mexico part of southern United States of America, right? Well, the year after that, he went around to Okinawa, and then he went to Japan, and he said, "Open up, Japón. America wants to trade with you, not free trade, unequal trade treaties." And of course, that eventually led to the Russo-Japanese War, World War I, and World War II. That's part of the Freemasonic game plan, assisted with their buddies, the Society of Jesus. So let's take a look. And by the way, Commodore Admiral Perry was a Freemason, straight up. So let's just take a brief look, because I want to put this discussion in a much broader context. And I also want to get it, everybody's talking about the Silk Road and the Belt and Road, and everybody's an expert on China. They know about Yamashita's gold and all that. They've never been to Asia, and they've been to maybe a Thai restaurant, or maybe they like sushi, right? I liked the Japanese restaurants in LA when I grew up, when there were only Japanese people there, instead of a bunch of posers who were there going, wasabi or weeaboos, thinking that, oh, I'm soaking up Japanese culture by eating Japanese. All right. I'm sorry. It's really great that Japan is keeping out tourists right now, because there's too many weeaboos floating around there. A lot of posers who were influenced by, anime, which is great. Anyway, here's Oda Nobunaga, and see, the Jesuits thought they were going to Japan to study Japanese culture so they can practice their 10,000 deceits. They have a strategic lying This is their own documents I'm going for. So if the group, they may be people who are the Mexica, from, Mexico City, Aztecs. They might not want to surrender their beliefs. So say, oh yeah, we agree with you. And then they infiltrate it until they can unfold them and take it over and say, okay, now you're all baptized. So they tried to do the same thing with Japón. They went in to study the Japanese, and they found a superior, well-armed civilization who were ready for them, because it's all about, they were fighting each other. They had a whole spy network, internet, in the whole region. They know what the Jesuits were doing in what is now Vietnam and what is now China and Korea. They knew the Catholics were big, and most South Koreans, if they're not in some cult, are today. Korean Americans are Roman Catholic. How do you think that happened? Well, I'm giving you the story. All right, because I'm telling you that the Asian part of the immigration is not talked about. This is a book I co-authored back in 1997 when my friend and colleague Rodolfo Torres, or as I call him, Rudy, right? It's called New American Destinies, a reader in contemporary Asian and Latino immigration. These are the two largest groups, but all you hear is about Latinos who are being shipped over to Martha's Vineyard, which I thought was a great piece of theater. And I welcome them to move to Napa, Sonoma, and the wine country, so they can be with Gavin Newsom and French Laundry, where the prefix dinners are $1,500 per person. A lot of room there. Sure. Anyway, but so the Jesuits thought they'd go to Japan to study the Japanese to get the intelligence, but little did they know that Oda Nobunaga and his scholars, his intellectuals, because Nobunaga, he was a samurai, of course, right? But 90% of warrior craft is intelligence. So Nobunaga was studying the Jesuits, not the other way around. Here's what I'm telling you right here.
The Tower Keep was a majestic 7-story structure with a height of 48 meters. The exterior design was daring, with elements of Chinese architecture. The walls were extensively decorated with gold. The interior was the height of luxury. The reconstruction captures every detail. The rooms were decorated throughout by the master painter Kano Eitoku and his students. On the top floor, portraits of Chinese emperors were symbols of Nobunaga's authority. Nobunaga was deeply interested in foreign cultures. He was very fond of Western globes and timepieces, and sometimes wore a European cape. He also invited Jesuit priests to visit the castle. One visitor, Louis Froid, left a description of Nobunaga's fortified palace. In terms of its structure and strength, its riches and beauty, it equals the finest castles in Europe.
私は美だと思いますね。美しさ、その美しさや自分が理想としていることを表すためのステージであるというふうに見てたんじゃないかな。信長の偉大さっていうのが人の語り伝えによってあるいは文献によって伝わっていくんじゃなくて、見ることによって感じることによって、それが伝わっていく。
But Shibusawa is convinced Nobunaga was chasing yet another dream.
その当時はポルトガルもそれからスペインも非常にヨーロッパの中では小さい国だったわけですけども、世界中にどんどん航海をしていって領土を広げていったっていう、そういう歴史がありますので、スペインやポルトガルのその活躍っていうのを見聞きするにつれてどんどん自分でもやりたくなったんじゃないかなというふうに想像します。
Louis Froid quoted Nobunaga as saying that as soon as he unified Japan, he planned to send an armada to China. It's easy to imagine a visionary like Nobunaga founding trade networks across the globe.
You got that? Founding trade networks across the globe. And just to put it in context, here are the dates of Oda Nobunaga. I'm telling you this because most people who are watching this were raised on Mr. Miyagi, Mr. Miyagi, right? By these Hollywood wankers, right? Which I'll have to include, Mr. Conan the Barbarian himself, and Kill Bill, all those other guys, right? Now the John Wayne movie, the Barbarian and the Geisha. I had to, I grew up watching this stuff. My dad said, "You got to read the real history. This is all Hollywood bullshit. This is all meant to obliterate the history." Okay, here's Oda Nobunaga's dates: born 1534, died 1582. By the way, he was betrayed by one of his own men. That's universal treachery, right? But you can see he had a globalist vision himself. He says, "I know what you Jesuits are up to. This is the dream of all totalitarian." He was a dictator. He was a military dictator himself. So I'm just trying to broaden out here from this book that this is a global and is still a new world order goal that's been centuries in the making, and it's coextensive with the world, and now, according to people like Tom Horn, going out into the universe, right? You know about the Vatican Observatory, right? They're looking at Exo Vaticana, they're out there. Anyway, I'm getting out of the, beyond the scope of the book itself. But let me just tell you, because you think, I might be too effusive in my praise of this book. But one chapter here in the third part of this book is titled "The Jesuits, the Church, and the Deep State." It's there in black and white. And I'm reading this, and I can't believe this. I think I'm reading stuff that Alex Jones was talking about when he was still a journalist instead of the subject of his own show with the Sandy Hook. Some are saying fake trial. Some are saying it's just a show, I don't know. We'll find out. But it's here. And just to give you an idea of the extensiveness of what he's talking about, we have who is the current U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services. I've mentioned him before. His name is Xavier Becerra, right? Probably named after, Francis Xavier, the guy that tried to colonize my country, and we kicked his ass out of there because we was organized and we was badass, and we had it together, and we knew what she was about. Just like I'm sharing intelligence with you here, You know, Nobunaga had dozens of people like me advising him who were trained in classical Chinese and who knew all the different dialects. Japan was heavily into the whole trading. So and some of them had been to Europe. Some had even been to Rome to check stuff out back in the 16th century. You don't know that through Quentin Tarantino and from Mr. Miyagi. All right. So you better, I'm telling you, you better and I better. We got to start talking about the other part of the world as well. Right? We can talk all we want about Hamilton and all the institutions in America and all the, all the great common law tradition of England. Yeah, but you know what? It hasn't been working, has it? We can talk about science, Western science, but hey, that paradigm's falling. I'm going to be attending a seminar talking about how life on planet Earth might have come from exoplanetary. It's called panspermia. And if the British colonial empire had not been so prejudiced against their Indian colonial subjects, they would have been able to understand the brilliance of the Rig Veda, of the Indian cosmology, or the Chinese, which are very, very similar. They were influenced, right? But they can't do that because they're a colonial sub. They're inferior. And I'm going to give this essay to the people on Patreon because this is I've been following it. I've done a talk on the work of Chandra Wickrama Singh before, who was one of the key proponents of panspermia. So there's all kinds of implications. Believe me, the Vatican scientists, they're on it, man. They know what panspermia is, especially the Jesuits. They're all about learning, right? America's about dumbing down. That's something that Archbishop Vigano, he challenges our education institutions to get rid of some of its demonic serpent curriculum. But there needs to be also an intellectual challenge to up our game so that the United States can produce the intellectual talent, both in the humanities and in the sciences, to really lead the world and at least be in the upper ranks of the world leadership in this area. Okay, to finish about Becerra, he's a local. The reason I'm interested, not the only reason, but he's a local boy. He's from Sacramento. I'm in Sacramento, right? And he went to McClatchy High School. I used to live right down around the corner from McClatchy, right? I think it's one of the first high schools in the area. And then from there, he took a little. We don't know the missing years, but he went to the University of Salamanca in España. And I said, hey, that sounds familiar. And sure enough, I double checked. And that's where Ignacio Loyola, and Xavier, all the acolytes, that's where they got their training as Jesuits. University of Salamanca, which is the oldest university, I think, in all of España, what today is España, right? Which is very much related later on to the House of Coburg-Sachs, right? The Habsburg, which later tried to take over Mexico. I mean, it's a global phenomenon. So that's Xavier Becerra. This is very much, and he's supposedly the head of health and human service. Well, he is. And before that, he was Secretary of State of the state of California under Gavin American Psycho Newsom, Gruesome Newsom, and the other people. I think it was Newsom. So there you go. Just some local history there to show you how it intersects with the international scene. Okay, let me just, since I'm kind of running out of time, show you a little bit about the Virgin of Guadalupe, right, on the hill called El Tepeyac.
Mexico City. Even today, the image of the Lady of Guadalupe surprises the world with its enigmas. It appeared mysteriously on the cloak of a Chichimeca Amerindian and is affectionately known as the Morenita because its features appear to be half-caste. For about 500 years, Guadalupe has been a symbol for believers of Latin America. Religious tradition tells that 10 years after the conquest of the Aztec capital, later known as Mexico City, At dawn, on December the 9th, 1531, the Amerindian Juan Diego was traveling to Tlatelolco. As he traveled across Mount Tepeyac, he was attracted by the harmonious song of birds from the peak where the sun was rising. He moved towards the peak of the hill. He heard a voice quietly calling him and saw a girl standing in a bright light. She spoke to him in the cultured language of the Aztecs, Nahuatl.
Juan Diego, si te ruego, te suplico.
Juan Diego Sin, please, I beg you, I'm the Virgin Mary, the mother of the true God for whom all live, the creator of men, Lord of the heavens and the earth. Go to the bishop, tell him that I want a little house here in the glade, to honor him who is love, tenderness, compassion, good, peace, truth, justice. Juan Diego raced to the bishop, but obviously it was not easy for him to obtain an audience.
Okay, we'll pause it there for now. And this is for the scientifically inclined, the people who discount that if there's going to be an apparition, Marian apparition of the Virgin Mary, which I have been sensing for quite a number of months now. I'm just picking this up. I don't know, and I think it does have something to do with the hostilities in Ukraine, Russia, which could precipitate World War III. No hype at all. But when I went up there to make my pilgrimage, sure, there's a whole street that's full of touristic curios and souvenirs and whatnot. But once you get into the basilica itself, there's a modern building, which is huge because they have, tons of tourists every year. And then there's the colonial, the original stone one, which was closed when I was there for renovation. But so, I did go, I think it was a Christmas service. I went to the big one. But there is a garment made from indigenous flax. I don't know what the indigenous name that is on display in the basilica. It's behind glass, and there's a very short little moving side because they don't want people to just stand there and hog the space. Like if you ever went to the Louvre and you're trying to look at the Mona Lisa, you can't really get up there. So they have a brilliant idea. You have to get on the moving side, and as you're looking at this cape that's on the colors I saw with my own eyes. They're still vivid, and they haven't faded in hundreds of years, not one bit. And so some scientists, I think there's a similar team that were looking at the Shroud of Turin, did an analysis of this garment, and they said these dyes are not found locally. Right? There's just so many different anomalies. So they didn't say miracle, but you draw your own. By the way, I made several passes on this. I just couldn't believe it. It looked brand new, and I was looking at something that was 500 years old. And that's part of you mentioned they saw the apparition of Mary, the Virgin of Guadalupe, right? On El Tepeyac, the hill. So here's a little bit of the science behind it for the people who don't believe in miracles. That's fine. Oops.
They gave her a native name, Tonantzin Guadalupe. Tonantzin is not a name, but a title. Our Little Mother in a reverential form.
So, who can have painted this image, which represents a perfect synthesis between the Christian iconography and the Mesoamerican culture? Who, just 10 years after the conquest of Mexico, could have such a profound understanding of the two worlds? Moreover, who could have translated this knowledge into a masterpiece of harmony, such as the image of Guadalupe? The studies of the image of the Morenita have shown that the painting respects what is known as the golden section. a harmonic correspondence between the individual parts and the whole, between the spaces and the volumes, well known to the Greeks, and which can be translated into the golden ratio, 1 to 6.18, present in nature, in man, in the galaxies, and even in music.
Initially, my husband took as a reference point the seam down the middle. Beginning from this, he found a perfect square, and from here, using a compass, he found another smaller part, which is a rectangle. The total, A plus B, that is the square, plus...
I'm going to move it up a little bit here.
Plus the golden or perfect...
The professor also identified what is said to be the figure of the bishop, and which corresponds perfectly to paintings from the period in which Juan de Zumárraga is portrayed. Then there is the figure of Juan Diego with a tilma around his neck.
Then I found something that really attracted my attention. It was a black woman, who I later found out actually existed in history. Then, near what was supposed to be the bishop, I saw a white man. I later came to know that he could have been an interpreter.
So there's all these detailed scientific explications that help to reinforce the material reality of this miracle. I guess I'll call it a miracle. I saw it with my own eyes. I mean, behind a protective case, of course. Now, just a little bit of my own autobiographical information. I didn't know this at the time, but my dad used to. My dad was one of the founders of a Los Angeles institution. It's called El Mercado de Los Angeles. El Mercado. I was a little kid when he teamed up with these Mexican-American brothers named the Chayura brothers. Ruben was a real estate guy like my dad. One of the older brothers had gone to Stanford University and was a medical doctor. So he had capital and ways to get investment. And then the third brother, the Chayura brothers, was a contractor. Perfect, right? So I used to go to this site there on Lorena Street. It's called El Mercado. You can find out nobody knows that there was a Japonesa involved in this East Los Angeles institution. But nearby in the area, this is before the Renaissance of the more recent Mexican immigration, there was a local restaurant called El Tepeyac, right? That's where the apparition held. When I was a little boy, we went there for their famous burritos. It's called Manuel's, and we used to go there all the time. And it's close to the Los Angeles hospital. We'd see interns and their scrub and policemen, and it was like everybody from LA was at El Tepeyac or Manuel's to eat their famous burritos. I'm just still, coming off my fast, so I'm not, this is kind of makes me a little queasy, but I wanted to share with this is part of my history. And it's an homage to the Virgin of Guadalupe. It's called El Tepeyac. Here you go.
Special 6-pound burrito. This is the biggest burrito that you can find in LA. Do you think one person can actually eat this whole thing? I'm gonna try, so stay tuned if you want to see the results. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Steve from Rockstar Eater coming to you with another rockin' episode. And I'm out here in Boyle Heights, which is east of downtown Los Angeles. Now out here, there's really not that many acclaimed restaurants, but there is one special spot behind me that I think is worth checking out. As you guys know, I'm starting like this little food challenges series in which I discover and go out and try some of the best eating challenges I can find in LA. And this Mexican restaurant is known for its huge burrito. It's like a 6-pound burrito that's 13 inches long. It's for 2 to 4 people, although some people have finished it as part of an eating challenge. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go and see if I can finish this whole burrito or how much of it I can get through. So if you guys wanna see what's possibly the biggest burrito that you can find in Los Angeles, you've come to the right episode. So stick all the way to the end of this show so that you can see me try to kill this enemy of mine, which is this 13-inch, 6-pound burrito. And if you're new to this channel, take a moment right now to hit that subscribe button, as well as the notification bell, because I put out these food and travel videos weekly that you don't want to miss out on. So go ahead, do that right now. And in the meantime, I'm going to go into the kitchen and see how this special burrito is made. So guys, this is Jay right here. He's a general manager here at El Tepeyac restaurant, and he's gonna show us all how to make this special, huge burrito that we're gonna make. So Manuel special, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's do this.
Let's do this.
Okay, you get the, El Tepeyac. It just brings back such pleasant memories of my youth. By the way, the Boyle Heights here, where there were lots of Japanese Americans who were living in the area, lots of Negroes, as you recall back then. And there were a lot of Jews living there because Jews were not allowed to live in the Anglo neighborhoods that later opened up. Of course, the Japanese during World War II were removed from Boyle Heights and sent to the Native American concentration camps, where the reservations were. So it's always been heavily Latino from my memories, and it is today. And now El Tepeyac has a lot of competition. The taco trucks of Los Angeles are world famous now. I wish they had them up here where I live. All right, so getting back as we're winding down here, and the reason why I put this in here is because Archbishop Vigano does not maybe. Well, I think the crisis has been going long enough for him to, but doesn't really talk about the immigration crisis to the United States of America that I've found. I haven't gone through this with a fine-tooth comb, but maybe he does address it, but at least he doesn't address it as being a salient issue. It's a really divisive political issue right now, and it has been for a number of years, right? I don't know if it's a conscious omission or not, because most Mexican immigrants and people from Costa Rica or wherever, they're coming not just from Mexico, but other parts of Latin America, are largely Roman Catholic, right? So, that's something that I think is one of the deficits. I would like take off half a point for not dealing with that. But that being said, I personally welcome all the not legal, but the legal immigrants who are coming to sanctuary states to, again, camp out at Kamala Harris's front yard, Nancy Pelosi, and New York City, where all those people up in Martha's Vineyard, wherever else it may be. But on a note of peace and reconciliation, I would like to conclude today's talk with, as I mentioned before, a prayer specifically directed for the American people. I believe the text is in here if you want to read it again and be inspired by it. Again, I heartily recommend that you buy this book. To me, this signals a change within the clergy, not just the Roman Catholic Church clergy, but religious leaders in America. We've been waiting for you to take a positive stand so that we American people, right, can resume our lives free of the oligarchs who have taken upon themselves to hijack all our major institutions for their own immediate benefit. These are the children who are the product of the union of the snake and woman. And these are the children of darkness that Archbishop Vigano talks about. These are the people who are part of the New World Order, the deep state, and the deep church. The deep church is complicit in this. So let's end on this note, and I will say goodbye to you now. Thank you very much. Have a good weekend. Check this out. You can find the Archbishop on YouTube and a lot of commentators as well. And I'll see you, God willing, on Tuesday with another astounding cast. Here we go. Prayer for America.
A Prayer for the United States of America, composed by His Excellency Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano. Almighty and eternal God, King of kings and Lord of lords, graciously turn your gaze to us who invoke you with confidence. Bless us, citizens of the United States of America. Grant peace and prosperity to our nation. Illuminate those who govern us so that they may commit themselves to the common good in respect for your holy law. Protect those who, defending the inviolable principles of the natural law and your commandments, must face the repeated assaults of the enemy of the human race. Keep in the hearts of your children courage for the truth, love for virtue, and perseverance in the midst of trials. Make our families grow in the example that our Lord has given us, together with his most holy mother and Saint Joseph in the home of Nazareth. Give to our fathers and mothers the gift of strength to educate wisely the children with which you have blessed them. Give courage to those who, in spiritual combat, fight the good fight as soldiers of Christ against the furious forces of the children of darkness. Keep each one of us, O Lord, in your most sacred heart, and above all, he whom your providence has placed at the head of our nation. Bless the President of the United States of America so that, aware of his responsibility and his duties, he may be a knight of justice, a defender of the oppressed, a firm bulwark against your enemies, and a proud supporter of the children of light. Place the United States of America and the whole world under the mantle of the Queen of Victories, our unconquered leader in battle, the Immaculate Conception. It is thanks to her and through your mercy that the hymn of praise rises to you, O Lord, from the children whom you have redeemed in the most precious blood of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you once more, children of light. Have a great weekend as we close out September and we go to the national holiday of all the Satanists pretty soon at the end of October. And I'm trying to generate some ideas in anticipation of the great pagan celebration of America's decline. The children of light shall prevail. All right. Thank you again for indulging me. Oh, man. I'm kind of hungry now. I wonder why. Thank you very much. We'll see you soon, God willing. Bye.